Easy Explained Darwinism Summary and Conclusions. So first, let's look at some summative and conclusory remarks on natural selection and divergent evolution. Starting to connect some dots here, putting some things together. So Darwin says natural selection also leads to divergence of character. For more living things can be supported on the same area, the more they diverge in structure, habits, and constitution. So as natural selection progresses, right, as a means to evolution, it's beneficial and favorable that things would diverge, right? We're going to see an increased biodiversity. We'll fill more and more niches, right? The more structures, the more habits, the more likely we are to have a fully fledged and functioning ecosystem. So this is likely to be seen. There's also an application here to Malthusian economics, right? We see Darwinism actually playing into like an economic theory in sense. If you look at, just the resources on Earth, that there's the more and more people, especially that there's going to be an increased struggle, an incessant struggle to life, to continue to survive, to find your resources, to use them. These are two quotes from Darwin, the battle of life, right? To stay alive. It's a struggle. It's incessant. It's something everybody faces, especially the more and more people that there are. So let's look at a selection here. Darwin says the small differences distinguishing varieties of the same species will steadily tend to increase till they come to equal the greater differences between species of the same genus or even of distinct genera. Right? So essentially, divergent evolution can only continue and increase to an extent, right? It's not like there's impossible things that evolution and divergent evolution can give rise to. There's going to be a point where we're going to plateau, and that's really we're going to see this struggle and this battle really ramp up. Darwin also has this beautiful metaphor of the tree of life. So it's almost poetic, right? Let's look at this selection. Darwin says, as buds give rise by growth to fresh buds, and these, if vigorous, branch out and overtop on all sides many a feebler branch, so by generation I believe it has been with the great tree of life, which fills with its dead and broke branches the crust of the earth, and covers the surface with its ever-branching and beautiful ramifications. So the metaphor here, right, is that like all of life on Earth is kind of branching and growing out like a tree, just like a tree grows. And that all the branches and twigs, the little pieces, those are new species. But just like a tree, some parts will fall off and break and settle back into the surface, just like some species go extinct. It's actually I think it's a very captivating metaphor here that Darwin uses. He also gets into these other mechanisms and evolutionary patterns, not explicitly, but now we have names for them, right? With more modern science, we have names for them. Darwin hints at them. He's considering this. He was coming up with them at the time. Punctuated equilibrium is an evolutionary pattern that's almost the opposite of gradualism, where we see these species will be at equilibrium, meaning very consistent, not changing, but all of a sudden some event happens where there's a lot of change very quickly. He does consider this possibility. And there's also the mechanism of gene flow, which is when we do have that immigration or emigration into or out of a population, and they stay, right? They either stay or they stay in or they remain out, and that will change the gene pool. That is how the gene pool is going to be changing. So you just consider that in this passage. Darwin says, a number of species, however, keeping in a body, might remain for a long period unchanged, that's the equilibrium, whilst within the same period, several of these species, by migrating into new countries, right, that's the gene flow, and coming into competition with foreign associates, might become modified, right? He is considering this here a little bit. He doesn't use these terms. He is before the time that these are properly named and fully studied, but there's hints of them there. He was kind of thinking about these possibilities. And finally, a conclusion from Darwin. He says there is grandeur in this view of life with its several powers, right? Thinking about the possibility that species and organisms can evolve through natural selection, having been originally breathed into a few forms or into one, and that whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved. Great way to end the text. I think it sums up a lot of his views of how he views nature as a naturalist. So that's putting a lot of things into context as we summarize this work and conclude it. So for now, I hope this helps.